Joining us now, Sam Kazman, General Counsel for the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Sam, bring us up to date on the lawsuit, on what is going on. In your opinion, does Dr. Mann have the right to sue someone who says, hey, you're wrong?
I'd say absolutely not, and certainly not in the District of Columbia, which has a special type of statute called an anti-SLAPP statute that is specifically intended to quickly knock down attempts such as those by Dr. Mann to chill speech on controversial issues. As I'm sure many of your listeners know, the debate over global warming has been one involving a lot of very heated rhetoric on both sides. Dr. Mann himself is one of the people most responsible for the level of that heated rhetoric, because he himself tosses around accusations of folks being climate deniers, global warming deniers, and fraudsters and scientific disinformers. And so I think it's especially ironic that when we come back with language at the same level of what's called energy, rebutting him, he tries to chill the debate. And so I think he's wrong on the merits, but he's also wrong on the whole First Amendment law, which ought to and actually does protect this sort of speech.
Sam Kazman, in a different venue on this same subject, you put it this way, quoting you now, Sam: all Americans engaged in public debate and discourse on contentious political issues will be affected by this case. Sam, you may have used the term chilling effect. It's ironic that on matters of global warming, we're seeing the good doctor involved in a chilling of First Amendment rights. Would you update us, please, on the appeals process and where you see this headed?
Sure. We filed our opening brief with the Court of Appeals here in D.C. About a week and a half ago, and shortly after that, we got a gratifying number of amicus briefs from many organizations supporting us. And when I say many organizations, I'm talking about really a full range politically from left to right. We have the Reporters Committee for First Amendment Freedoms. We've got a number of newspapers, I believe, ranging from Washington Times to Washington Post to New York Times and so forth, all asserting that this sort of lawsuit not only has no basis under the First Amendment, but ought to be very quickly knocked out of court.
Well, Sam, we're going to ask you to stay around for more conversation, and here with his perspective, let's bring in Ari Rabin-Havt, a former advisor to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Ari, we welcome you in on this Monday morning, and we have an audio clip here from FoxNews.com as Dr. Mann sat down to defend his work. Let's both listen to this, and Ari, will get your reaction as well as that of Sam following what Dr. Mann has to say here.
There were efforts by congressmen, by powerful
lobbyists,
politicians,
yep, right.
As well as well-funded front groups and organizations tied to fossil fuel interests. There was this massive effort aimed at discrediting the hockey stick, and in doing so by discrediting me personally, simply because of the inconvenience that this curve had for those who want to continue to argue that we don't have a problem with climate change.
Dr. Mann with Alan Colmes on Fox News Radio, and video of that at foxnews.com. So, Ari, do you believe that Dr. Mann has a legitimate case here?
Look, I'm not a lawyer like your other guests, and I don't play one on TV. So, and I'm not one to judge complex litigation. It strikes me that this case has proceeded for more than a year now, and it seems to me that the defendants, both the Competitive Enterprise Institute, the National Review, and their reporter, have gotten quite nervous about this case and its outcome. And I think that speaks to their position here. And I think the courts will work out the First Amendment issues that are, frankly, far above my pay grade to work out as a non-attorney. But I would say, look, there's always been a judgment between what is free speech and what is defamation, what is libel. And And I think Michael Mann certainly has a right to his day in court as an eminent scientist.
But if Michael Mann has a right to his opinion, pardon me, don't those who disagree, those who say the hockey stick chart is not going to result in the world going to HE double hockey sticks, don't they have the right to make that point? The essence of political debate. Sam, he says politically, Ari says you guys are, quote, nervous about
well, look,
this.
Unless you're born a millionaire or you've lucked into winning, a Powerball sweepstakes, any person, any entity in this country is going to be nervous when they're sued in court. And frankly, this case is a hugely expensive one. Dr. Mann, we suspect, has the backing of the Climate Science Legal Defense Fund. I have no idea what their assets or revenues are, but I suspect they are substantial. We believe we've got a First Amendment right to say what we did. The person, the CEI adjunct who posted the blog piece that led to this litigation, cited as his source a professor holding an endowed chair at MIT, because he had that very reasonable basis for the statement he made. In our view, that's the end of the case. There is
so
no
it's
libel
reasonable to compare a
source.
scientist to Jerry Sandusky? I'm just making sure we're all on the same page here, because that's what you did.
No, no, come on. That was a metaphor, and the notion that a man was molesting data is just a rhetorical piece of hyperbole. But the notion that Penn State had exonerated Michael Mann in some previous investigation, just like they had supposedly exonerated Sandusky, which turned out to be total nonsense, that notion of Mann having been whitewashed by Penn State was based on comments by Richard Linden, who's an endowed professor at MIT. Because we had such a credible source for that claim, I think this case ought to have been kicked out very long ago, and we're hopeful that that's what will now happen at the Court of Appeals.
Ari, you were taking exception to the Jerry Sandusky comment. As objectionable as you may find that, in the world of rough and tumble politics and public debate, there is use of hyperbole all the time. Some find it objectionable, some, quite frankly, find it agreeable or applicable. In fact, it was that noted Democrat, Harry Truman, who said, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. So tell us really, Ari, how does this differ from the rough and tumble of political debate in this country that we have seen on both sides for a long, long time?
Well, I think the problem is that we're talking about science as political debate. And science shouldn't be political debate. Science should be facts and based on science. And when you conflate science and political debate, that gets to the core problem with the entire discussion about climate change in this country, to begin with, that we are conflating both science and politics into one.
Sam, a minute remains. We'll give the last word to you, sir.
Look, I think it's clear that the science here has huge political implications. And for those who follow how science turns into policy, the hockey stick, we view it as being a one weapon for a practically unprecedented aggrandizement of political power. And that is one reason we got into this issue, and it's really one reason we plan to stay in it. And frankly, I think we've got an absolute First Amendment right to keep doing that.
Gentlemen, we appreciate the debate, the respectful tone of the debate here, and we look forward to visiting with you in the days ahead as we monitor this very important case dealing with First Amendment rights and civil discussion in the public square. Thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
When we come back, our chief Washington correspondent for Newsmax.com, a guy I knew during my days in Congress, pleased to call him a colleague now, John Gizzi. He's keeping his eye on what is happening politically in D.C., and he will join us with his assessment of just what's happening in the world of politics next on America's Forum.